Welcome to section 16, where we're going to continue the conversation about data types that allow more than one value in the variable. So there'll be two that we're talking about today, a struct, also known as a structured data type, and an enum, which is an enumeration. So both of these could be considered group data types where they allow more than one value in a variable name. And we're going to see how to implement those. And then we're going to look at the similarities and the differences between the two that we've already learned, the arrays and vectors, and these two new ones, the structs and the enums. So how about if we start with structures? So first of all, one of the limitations of an array, and a vector for that matter, is they all have to have the same data type, right? So the struct is a data type that kind of overcomes that limitation by allowing a variety of different data types within a single variable or a single structure. We're going to see that you can actually have member variables and you can have functions, and by default all of the members are public. You can either initialize the struct variables when you first create it or when you start to use it. And structures are really good if you want to group common or like data elements together. So let's see how we can declare a struct. So we're going to use the keyword struct. We're going to give our struct a variable name, and then in the curly braces we're going to put a list of all of our different variables, and the data types can vary. I want you to notice that there is a semicolon at the end of the closing curly brace. So this is what it might look like if we were declaring a struct object. We're going to create an object called CS class, and I might assume that a CS class is made up of a class name, the number of students, and perhaps the room number that it's in. And so we have three different members of this struct, and each one of them can potentially have different data types and the different links for those data types. So let's see how we would then declare, now that we have a struct object, how are we going to declare variables? So here's an example. I'm going to use the name of the struct as the data type, and then I'm just going to create a variable or a struct object. I have CS1410. You can create multiple objects on the same line, CS2450 and 2420. We just use the name of the struct. So there's another way that we can declare objects of this struct class. That would be following the closing curly brace with the names of the variables or the struct objects that you want to create. But I want you to notice that we still have the semicolon at the end of that list. So once I have declared from some struct objects, I have CS1410, how would I go about initializing or giving that value? So here's an example of, we'll just do CS1410. It has a class name, it also has a number of students, and it also has a room number. We're going to use the dot operator in order to be able to access each one of the individual members. Obviously class name is a string and both number of students and room numbers are integers, so I'm just going to declare them, or I'm going to initialize them to those values. If I want to access them, we're going to use the same dot access operator. I'm going to use the name of my variable, my struct object, CS1410, and then dot class name. I can capture the value, setting another variable to it, or I can just display the value. So the dot operator is how we set the values and also how we access the individual values. So we're going to find out that we can actually nest structures inside of one another. So here's an example of a class struct. It seems like a single class would have the name of the class, the instructor, and the grade. I see different data types in here, my semicolon at the end of my closing curly brace. But now I'm going to create another struct, and one of the members of student struct is actually going to be a struct itself. And so a student probably has a name, a W number, and they might just have their favorite class. And so we have a class struct, and so I'm going to create a variable of the class struct, and we will call it favorite class. I have done a shortcut for creating variables here. You notice that I have James and Juan at the end of my closing curly brace with my semicolon. So if I have nested structures, how do we go about accessing the values in our original structure as well as our nested structure? So it might look something like this. So I have the two structures on the screen so we can remember. How about if we have James and 1? How about if we want to set James's name to something? It's James.name. We already know the .access operator, right? But now if I want to set their grade, well, the grade is going to equal the James dot, and the name of the member is favorite class, and then I'm going to use the .access operator for which one of the members of the class objects. For this one, we're going to set grade, or actually we're capturing grade. And then if I wanted to display, for instance, Juan's favorite class, the name of Juan's favorite class, I just use the variable 1, the dot favorite class for the class member, and then I'm going to have to tell it which one of the class members am I trying to access. So we're just going to display class name. All right, so how about if we try this out? We'll write some code using structs.